Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. Sunny Throckmorton, Casey Kelly. And my heart stops, like the setting sun, when I think about what I wish I had done. Oh, the last goodbye is the hardest thing to say. That's when the cowboy rides away. When Kiki and I started dating, she made sure I was present at all her family gatherings. At that time, her grandparents were still alive, and they ruled the household. Kiki's father had 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister. Kiki's mother was the only child in her family, so her maternal grandparents were very fond of Kiki and her brother. These gatherings were always filled with aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, and their distant relatives. Since Kiki seemed to be in love with me, I got acquainted with her entire family tree. Mostly, they were friendly, but some had their doubts. "What do you do for a living, Ryan?" Kiki's Uncle John asked as about a dozen adults gathered around one of the food counters. "I'm a dispatcher assistant. I help schedule the movement of trucks." This didn't impress any of them, but I carried myself with enough confidence and said it was a good job for me. I truly believed that. I couldn't afford to get a college degree, and no one was willing to pay for it. This job had a future, even though I didn't have a degree. Well, I was probably the only one without that precious diploma. So Kiki got some flack while I intentionally stayed out of it. Apparently, Kiki didn't pay attention to their concerns, and I passed the sniff test. Later that same year, Kiki and I got married. When the transportation company I worked for went bankrupt shortly after we got married, we were forced to pay for our health insurance. Being relatively healthy, we decided to consult only specialists. Kiki's father's brother, Uncle Ted, was a family doctor. He agreed to waive most of his fees for us, and Kiki and I became his patients. According to Ted, we lived in a big city. His practice was in a town with a population of about 6,000 people, 50 kilometers from us. The population of our city was rapidly approaching 50,000. Ted's office was solely owned by him. He didn't believe in joining forces with others. I don't know the exact number, but he employed at least a few people. During the first 2 years of our marriage, I think I saw Ted only once when I got a strep infection. I received a penicillin shot in the buttock. There were a few other visits for checkups and blood tests, but nothing serious. Kiki saw Ted a few times until she became pregnant. Ted refused to deliver the baby, citing that malpractice insurance was astronomically expensive. Instead, he recommended a specialist in our city. We had previously agreed to wait before starting a family, but for some reason, Kiki's birth control pills didn't work. Uncle Ted brushed it off, saying that they are unreliable. Thus, Nathan, my eldest son, was born right after our 3rd anniversary. 2 years later, I was holding Ginger in my arms. I think the female doctor did a very good job. Let's face it, if Kiki liked her, so did I. Hardly any man has an idea of what it's like to be pregnant and to give birth with all the screaming. The 100-kilometer round trip to visit Ted with sick children didn't last long. We started going to healthcare providers closer to home in emergencies. Life was good. I was climbing the career ladder and was now supervising 5 employees. Kiki returned to work part-time when Ginger started preschool. My job as a manager included health benefits, which really helped reduce our personal expenses. Even though we stopped using Ted's services, we were still saddened when he passed away from a heart attack. At the gathering after the funeral, Ted's widow handed me several envelopes. "These are copies of your medical records from Ted's practice. We wanted to make sure that each of his patients received their records." Don't worry, I didn't peek. The envelopes were sealed quite securely. I hadn't visited Ted in several years, at least not for myself, but I had taken the kids a few times. I just didn't get sick. Kiki's envelope was much thicker because she still went to him for her annual checkups and other similar visits. Ginger's and Nathan's envelopes were thin, as they had only visited him a few times. To avoid losing them, I went and put them in the trunk of our car. A few days later, I opened my trunk to put in some boxes with work-related items. After loading the boxes, I brought the envelopes back into the house. I placed mine in my briefcase and took the other 3 envelopes to the kitchen. "Hey, Kiki, Ted's office wanted to make sure we all had copies of our medical records," I said, handing her the envelopes with Kiki's and the kids' records. Kiki's reaction wasn't exactly what I expected. I really couldn't understand what was wrong. Worried? That didn't make sense. I repeated what I had been told. Don't worry, I didn't peek. Another strange reaction followed, as Kiki's eyes were fixed on the envelopes, as if I had handed her a live grenade. She counted the 3 envelopes several times. Steeling herself, she counted to 3 again. Did you get yours too? Yes, I did. Dinner smells great. What are we having? Yes, roast, potatoes, and salad. Everything will be ready in about 30 minutes. I have a home office. Since some of the information on my computer is confidential, I always lock my office. This also meant I was responsible for keeping it tidy. That's life. The next 20 minutes were spent responding to emails. When I sat down for dinner, Kiki's eyes were red. I had to pull Ginger and Nathan away from the TV. Why were you crying? She ran her hand over her face and said, "It's just sad that Ted died so suddenly and at such a young age." I was once again struck by how differently Kiki was behaving. She had hardly shed a tear at his funeral. I guess death affects people in different ways. I'm not a stickler for neatness, especially in my office. However, I know where everything is. About a week later, I started to suspect that someone had been in my office because things weren't quite the way I had left them. Nathan or Ginger would have made a mess, so maybe Kiki cleaned up after them? Kiki denied knowing anything about it. Maybe I didn't know my home office as well as I thought. Kiki brightened up after about a week, and in my opinion, our sex life intensified. Over the next 6 months, everything went smoothly. As the kids grew older, we became friends with the parents of the kids who participated in various activities with ours: dancing, gymnastics, softball, baseball, basketball, and I'm sure I've missed many others. I was the head coach or assistant coach for many of the sports events. Kiki grew closer to about half a dozen women, and we started having get-togethers every couple of months, if schedules allowed. This particular gathering was at Ben and Jill's house. I really wanted to skip it because I had severe headaches, and on top of that, I had just had some skin cancer removed from my neck. Sitting in a recliner was far more appealing than attending a party. Kiki promised me something special if we went, and so we went. Well, the little head still makes some decisions. Our relationship had been strained for many years. When word got around that I wasn't feeling well, one of the parents, Rick, offered me a cannabis-infused gummy. This will perk you up a bit. It's got a little kick to it. Rick is one of those guys who's about 50 kilograms overweight, wears an earring just like his favorite action hero, and is on the verge of losing his house to foreclosure. Yet, he's a self-proclaimed expert on just about everything. So, he explained that edible cannabis first goes to your stomach, then to your liver, and then into your bloodstream and brain. The liver converts the drug into a more potent form, and this, combined with the substance from the original product, enhances the high. Since it's legal in our state, I took one. There's a first time for everything. As an inexperienced user, the effect was strong and fast. I found a bedroom and stared at the ceiling, which transformed into something only the imagination could create. Any pain I might have had was long gone. Was the music actually playing, or was it in my head? My watch showed that I'd been lying there for over an hour when I slid off the bed and crawled to the bathroom. After emptying my bladder, I crawled back to the bed, but this time I curled up on the carpet. Eventually, I made it out of the bedroom. The handrail on the stairs looked like wild grass swaying in the wind. It was too difficult to attempt going down, as I was quite sure they weren't supposed to spin like that, so I sat on the top step. From there, I could hear the treacherous sounds of women chatting. Occasionally, there was laughter, as some ladies do. When I focused again, I realized they were talking about sex, foreplay, when they like to be kissed. I guess I never really appreciated what women talked about. An unfamiliar voice was going on about how she loved being licked. Others chimed in. That's when I heard Kiki's voice. I haven't done that in so long. Ryan used to do it all the time, but I bet it's been 8 years. Well, there I was, crucified for being an inattentive lover and a poor excuse for a husband. Get the rope and find a tree. Build a gallows. Sharpen the guillotine. Death to the selfish husband. How could I? What a jerk. Under normal circumstances, I probably would have let it slide, but I was high and not thinking straight. I was definitely not myself. The ladies heard me coming down the stairs and, like crickets, fell silent. My wife asked, "Feeling better?" Yes and no. I had to defend my honor. It's been 10 years. Kiki looked confused. What's been 10 years? Have I treated you unfairly? Don't make me out to be the bad guy. Explain to them why. Kiki's eyes widened too much. She looked like one of those kids in a Margaret Keane painting. Ryan, please not here. Come on, Kiki. You shared with me. Let me share and show some care too. You see, ladies, Kiki gave me an STD. It happened before we had kids, but I only found out about it 10 years ago. 7 years after the fact. No, I wouldn't have agreed to a divorce after I found out. No, I didn't know who she was with back then. Hell, for all I know, she's entertaining your husbands on the side. Every time I see her flirting with a guy, I wonder if she's sleeping with him. When you're constantly lied to, your mind creates all sorts of scenarios. No, that's not true. Kiki cried out, covering her face with her hands. She was crying as I spoke. The frightened looks from the women told me they were still planning my swift and painful execution. Jill, the hostess, scolded me. Ryan, I think that's enough. Oh, come on, Jill. I'm not lying. 17 years ago, she cheated on me. 17 years ago, she started lying. 17 years ago, she decided to fool me. For 17 years, she's been forced to lie to me. It never happened? 17 years. Well, we stayed together despite everything because divorce is always against the fathers. Just to be sure, I did a DNA test on my kids. They're mine. But in any case, I'll take my chances with sex without a condom, but I'll never, ever go down on her. All the ladies glared at me, but I held back my smirk. God, I was so relieved to finally get that off my chest. For 10 years, I'd carried that burden, always watching for signs of infidelity. I can't say I ever really believed Kiki was still cheating, but then again, I missed all the signs 17 years ago, so my track record sucks. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest. I'll leave you ladies to get back to your talk, I said as I walked toward the backyard, where the music wasn't playing. Damn, I'm still high. 10 years ago, Ted's envelope with my medical records sat in my briefcase for several days before I tossed it into my mailbox. Eventually, it ended up on top of the mailbox pile because I always felt I had more urgent things to do. Besides, there were no surprises in it, right? It took 6 months before I finally worked up the nerve to open it. I was sitting in my home office on hold, listening to a recorded message about how much they valued my business. Every minute or so, I was reminded of how important I was to them. This gave me time to tidy up my desk and clear out my inbox. When I got to Ted's envelope, I casually opened it. Each page listed 2 or 3 office visits. Pretty dull stuff, and sometimes it was hard to read his handwriting. But then there was this: prescribed doxycycline, 2 capsules with breakfast, and 2 with dinner daily for a week for chlamydia. I was confused. I thought chlamydia was a sexually transmitted disease. I had never had a sexually transmitted disease, and I hadn't done anything that would have made me worry about contracting one. So, I looked it up online. It is a sexually transmitted disease. The problem was, no one had ever told me I had chlamydia. Judging by the date, it was a month after our 2nd anniversary, before we had kids. After reviewing Ted's records, I realized I hadn't been to see him at that time. During all my office visits, my weight and blood pressure were measured. Then some memories started to surface. I remembered getting a call from his office. They said Kiki had an infection and prescribed something for me just as a precaution. I was too busy with work to think much of it. A week later, the pills were gone, and I never felt sick. My simmering rage was interrupted by the fact that my long-delayed call was finally answered. Despite being a bit distracted, I resolved my work issue. The next step was to ask my secretary to hold all my calls. Returning to my online search, I learned all about the symptoms and timeline of the disease's progression. Kiki had contracted it during our 2nd anniversary cruise, give or take a week. It was a small cruise, just a trip around the Gulf of Mexico, but we drank quite a bit. Kiki danced a lot, and we had great sex the whole time. Other memories reminded me that the great sex resumed around the same time I took that medication. A month of really good sex resulted in Kiki getting pregnant with Nathan. That wasn't the time we had planned to start a family, but I never questioned why the birth control pills didn't work. Kiki thought it was because of the medication she was taking. The internet confirmed that doxycycline can affect the efficacy of birth control pills. Just great. My family was conceived because Kiki couldn't keep her legs closed. Damn it. Was Nathan even mine? Damn it. What about Ginger? I had no idea what to do. It was tearing me apart inside. Ted and Kiki had conspired to hide Kiki's STD from me. Who infected her? I felt like I was going to be sick. Was she raped? Was she still seeing someone? Did she hold on to fond memories of illicit sex and keep it a secret? I had muted my mobile phone, so I didn't notice I'd missed a call from Kiki. Glancing at the wall clock, I saw that it was nearly 7:30 p.m. I usually got home by 6. An hour ago, she had sent a message, "Where are you?" I replied, "Sorry, lost track of time. I'll be home soon." During the 2 weeks it took to get the results of my secret DNA test, everything went haywire. Fortunately, I'm the biological father of both Nathan and Ginger. During those 2 weeks, I delved into the strange divorce laws that apply to men. No fault? Seriously? It's her fault. She's the one messing around, and I'm the one who'll get screwed. Knowing Kiki's history of lying and hiding facts, I wasn't going to waste time demanding truthful answers. I became withdrawn and sullen. Even if I didn't file for divorce, Kiki could have filed at any time, and I'd still end up being a part-time father to Nathan and Ginger. My depression kept growing, draining the life out of me. My boss sent me to HR for a referral to a psychologist. Did I open up to the counselor? Not really. I just told him that my wife had cheated on me, and I didn't want to lose my kids. His response? Medication. It helped to some extent, but not nearly enough. You can call me a coward, but staying together was a lot cheaper. My depression lasted for months. The only refuge I had was playing with my kids, who were the only reason I stayed in the marriage. Kiki didn't pressure me, but there were changes in our family life. I stopped trying to go the extra mile. Volunteering for overtime became a thing of the past. Instead, I became a kids coach, an assistant coach, or just a big fan to fill my free time. My life was driven by the desire to be a full-time father to my kids, not some weekend stranger. When managing sports activities with 2 kids became overwhelming, I cut my workweek down to the minimum needed to maintain health insurance benefits. This allowed me to take on more coaching duties. Kiki didn't like the loss of income. I ignored her complaints. We made ends meet, but we struggled to save for a rainy day. Kiki would sometimes ask me if everything was okay, and I would lie to her, saying that it was. She knew that something had changed in our relationship, but neither of us wanted to talk about it. Of course, Kiki could have opted out at any moment, but she never did, even though it was clear that we were no longer the loving couple we once were. The barbecue today felt less festive to me. The ladies had returned, but Jill and Kiki were still missing. When the crowd dwindled to just a few people, I went looking for them. Apparently, Jill and Kiki were locked in the master bedroom. I asked Ben to pass along the message that I was heading home. Ben relayed to me, "Jill says Kiki is staying with us tonight. She also had a few unkind things to say about you." What happened, man? Kiki's past caught up with her tonight. I really bit her in the ass. I was high at the time, and I probably should have kept my mouth shut. Well, it's all out in the open now. Great party, Ben. I'm heading out. Don't worry, I'm not driving. At that moment, I really wasn't very high anymore, and, surprisingly, I didn't feel guilty about what I'd done. 10 years ago, my soul had been torn apart, and I had come to terms with my life and marriage. I think Kiki got a taste of what I had gone through. Both kids were home, engrossed in their phones. They mumbled that they were glad I was back. Eventually, everyone went to their rooms. When dawn broke, I was alone in my bed. There were no signs that Kiki had come home. My first cannabis gummy was long gone. Jill left a message, "You're a real jerk. Kiki will be back home after lunch." With 2 active kids, I didn't have to worry about them since they had their own activities. A day off from sports meant they could spend time with their friends. It wasn't until Nathan was heading out the door that he finally noticed Kiki wasn't around. "Where's Mom?" he asked. "She stayed over at Jill's last night. We had a bit of a disagreement. She should be back soon." He just shrugged, as if it was no big deal. Probably because I made it seem like it wasn't. The gutters needed cleaning, so I busied myself with that. I was picking up debris when, around 2 p.m., Kiki barged in, looking a bit worse for wear. "You bastard!" she screeched before slamming the front door. This was followed by the sound of shattering glass and even more yelling, cursing, and insults. I figured it might be best to spend the night at a motel, so I hit the road. Later, Nathan texted, "What the hell happened? Mom's gone crazy. Where are you?" "I'm staying at a motel. Why don't you find your sister and join me?" Half an hour later, Nathan and Ginger plopped down on the couch. I briefly explained what had happened, then took Ginger to her separate room. On Sunday morning, the three of us found Kiki unconscious on the kitchen floor. She smelled of alcohol. Nathan had to crawl through a basement window to get into the house because all the door locks were latched. There was glass everywhere, from plates, glasses, and anything else that could be broken. I had really hit a nerve. Nathan and I decided to stay at the motel again. Ginger chose to spend the day with my parents, so we dropped her off after buying some ice cream. Around dinner time, Ginger texted, "Mom apologized for trashing the house. I haven't heard anything from her. It doesn't seem like she plans to talk to you. I think she's staying at her parents' tonight. I'll stay at the motel again tonight. Nathan's with me. If you happen to swing by the house, let me know if she's gone. I'm staying put. See you soon." On Monday, we decided Kiki wasn't coming back, so we moved back home. I hired a cleaning service to tidy up the place. The kids were smart enough to postpone any serious questions for another time. Kiki didn't show up until the following weekend. She talked to Ginger. She talked to Nathan. She glared at me. I locked myself in my office. We didn't have a spare room, so Kiki and I still slept in the same bed, but that doesn't even begin to describe how cold that room was. A couple of weeks later, when I got home, Kiki was already waiting for me. My biggest concern was that she might be armed. I was wrong. "How could you?" was her first attack. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied. "I'm sorry. I was young and foolish. Uncle Ted read me the riot act. I felt like I wanted to die." Yes, but 10 years later, I felt like I wanted to die. I stayed for the sake of the kids. I hope you can come to terms with that and do the same. It was only once. Kiki, I can't believe that. You lied and schemed to keep me in the dark. Why? Was it so thrilling that you just couldn't forget about it? For all I know, you might still be doing it. No, that's not true. For the last 17 years, I've tried to be the best wife in the world. Except for being honest with me. Would you still have played me if you hadn't caught an STD? No. It was only once. You were snorkeling, and the group I was with on the beach was doing drugs. I was high, and it all happened so fast. I was so stupid. I took dozens of showers, trying to wash away the betrayal. You have to believe me, it was the only time. I stood there silently, unable to continue the conversation. After another minute, Kiki whispered, "What does this leave us with?" "I'm in a place I never thought I'd be. It's too late now to make things right. Were you ever planning to tell me?" After Ted died, no one but me knew about the STD. After you got your medical record and everything seemed fine with you, I thought it was buried. There was no reason to tell you. We survived as a couple and brought 2 wonderful children into the world. Our family came about because your medication made birth control pills useless. I found out because of something in my medical record. It took me 6 months to finally look at it. All you're doing is bringing back the pain I felt 10 years ago. I'm going for a walk. Ryan, please stay home so we can talk. Oh, now you want to talk. Not now. I might say something I can never take back. Leave me alone. Just let me walk around the block. I'll be back soon. We didn't achieve much in our discussions. It took a few weeks before Kiki and I resumed having sex, which it seemed we both needed. Thus began our mutually beneficial sexual relationship, though it was without love. Things were never the same in the house. I made it clear to Kiki that I would stay until Ginger went off to college, and that's all I could promise. We went about family affairs as one unit, but I didn't hold hands or get close to her in public. For the past 10 years, life carried on. Kiki and I were friends with benefits. Although we had sex, her years of deceit had killed the romance in me. The kids thought I was being unreasonable towards their mother. I just couldn't come to terms with such dishonesty. My relationships with both of them suffered as a result. We kind of stopped going to these barbecues with other people. It seems my comments turned me into a pariah, and the ladies were wary of Kiki. Sometimes, on weekends, Kiki would go out with her friends, unless there was a children's event to attend. A month before Nathan was set to go to college, Kiki decided to announce her intentions. She sent a message to Ginger, Nathan, and me. Tonight, when everyone is home, we're going to talk. Nathan, Ginger, your father and I have grown apart, and I will end this marriage when Ginger goes to college in 2 years. Believe me when I say that this has nothing to do with you. If anything, you've helped us stay together this long. No matter how much I tried to explain my perspective to the kids, I couldn't get through to them. Although no harsh words were spoken, our family was falling apart. After Kiki's announcement, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It took 2 years to work out the details, and the divorce was finalized quickly. The court approved it, and it was expected to become final shortly after Ginger started college. Kiki and I visited Nathan at school. We had family gatherings. Once, Kiki and I even went to the coast to relax on the sand without the kids. We wondered if there was any chance of saving our marriage. There wasn't. It was like a scene from a children's movie. Tearful parents saying goodbye to their youngest daughter as she heads off to her first year of college. Ginger pleaded with Kiki, "Please? I've made my decision. This is how it has to be." "I'm sorry," her mother said. After a platonic hug from Ginger, I returned to the car alone. Kiki stayed with Ginger until the tears dried up. They talked, cried, and then talked some more. I listened to a preseason football game on the radio in the car. Kiki and I didn't stop on the drive home. We barely spoke. When I placed the keys on the kitchen table, Kiki went upstairs to finish packing her things. It was sad. I was barely holding back tears. She pushed me away, unwilling to honestly address the problem. I drove her and the kids away because I couldn't forgive and forget. As much as I missed her, I also needed to start a new chapter in my life. Our time together had started like a blazing fire. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.